Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping into a really foundational text, the book of Joshua.
Yeah, think of it as our way of getting a handle on this huge moment of transition.
Absolutely. New leadership, this massive conquest of a promised land, really the birth of a nation as we know it.
Exactly. We're right at that point after Moses, who was such a huge figure, has died.
And the responsibility falls squarely onto Joshua.
Right. His job. Get the Israelites across the Jordan River into the land promised, way back to their ancestors.
It's more than just a handover, isn't it? It's like, can this next generation actually do it? Can they keep the covenant?
That's the core question. And the
Yeah.
promise itself, the land, it's huge.
It really is. The source maps it out from the wilderness in Lebanon, way over east of the Euphrates and then west to the Mediterranean. That's a serious piece of real estate.
No kidding. And the first commands to Joshua, they're very direct. Repeated, actually.
Be strong and courageous.
Yeah, and stick to the law Moses gave, meticulously.
It's not just rules for rules' sake, is it? It sounds like their success is tied directly to following this divine plan.
Precisely. Especially after losing Moses's direct, face-to-face leadership, this law becomes their anchor.
Right, the ultimate strategy guide. Stay aligned. And there's that bit about the book of the law. He's supposed to meditate on it.
Day and night. Keep it right there in his mind. It's presented as totally essential for his leadership, for their prosperity.
That link between sort of internalizing the law and external success is fascinating.
It is. It suggests conquest isn't just about swords and shields. It's about their spiritual state, their obedience, living out the covenant.
So Joshua gets this huge job in his first move. Well, messing around.
Nope. Straight to the officers. Get the food ready. We're crossing in 3 days. Very decisive.
And then he has to deal with that earlier agreement, right, with the tribes on the other side of the Jordan.
That's it. Reuben, Gad, and half of Manasseh. They'd already settled east of the river.
Okay, so the deal was their families and flocks stay put.
Yeah, they stay east. But the fighting men, they have to cross over armed, ready to help the other tribes conquer their lands.
It's a pretty interesting example of, tribal cooperation baked into the plan.
It is. And their response to Joshua is key. They're fully on board.
They basically say, we'll obey you just like Moses.
But with that crucial condition, only may the Lord your God be with you as he was with Moses. They get it. Divine backing is everything.
Okay, chapter 2. And bam, we're straight into espionage.
Totally. Joshua sends 2 spies into Jericho. High-stakes stuff.
Talk about walking into the lion's den. And where do they end up?
Unexpectedly at the house of Rahab, described as a harlot.
Which makes you wonder, was that deliberate? Looking for info off the beaten path.
Could be. Not the first place you'd check for enemy agents, maybe.
True. But someone does notice them. The king of Jericho gets word.
Yeah, Jericho wasn't clueless. They had some kind of intel network.
But this is where Rahab takes center stage.
Absolutely. She doesn't just hide them up on the roof under drying flax, which is such a great detail.
Yeah, very domestic scene amidst the danger.
But she actively lies to the king's men, sends them off on a wild goose chase.
Buying the spies, critical time. And it seems like more than just, helping strangers. Her loyalties are shifting.
Massively. She tells them, look, we've heard about you guys, about the Red Sea parting decades ago even, and the recent wins against the Amorite kings.
So the reputation precedes them. Fear is already doing some of the work.
It seems like it. These stories have terrified the locals. Rahab basically says everyone's hearts have melted because of the Lord.
Wow. So past victories are paving the way. And based on this, Rahab makes her move.
She asks them to swear an oath. When you take the city, spare my family because I helped you.
And they agree.
They do. They swear to protect her and everyone in her house if she keeps their mission secret.
And the signal?
That scarlet cord. She has to hang it in her window, a visible sign of the pact. Their protection hinges on it.
Such a vivid image, right? That simple red thread meaning life or death.
It really is. So the spies get away, thanks to her, and report back to Joshua.
And their intel.
Confident. They say, the Lord has definitely given us the whole land. Everyone there is terrified of us. Rahab's assessment was spot on.
Okay, chapter 3. The big one. Crossing the Jordan.
Yeah, Joshua gets everyone up early, down to the riverbank. You can just feel the tension, right? The anticipation.
And there are specific instructions about the Ark of the Covenant.
Right. The symbol of God's presence. The Levite priests have to carry it.
And the people need to keep their distance.
Yeah, about 2,000 cubits back. It emphasizes the holiness of the Ark, the reverence needed for what's about to happen.
It's like God is literally leading the way. And Joshua tells the people to, what? Sanctify themselves?
Get ready spiritually. Because, he says, the Lord is about to do wonders. Preparation for the miracle.
And the context here is important. The Jordan's flooding, right?
Exactly. Our source says it was harvest time, overflowing its banks. Humanly impossible to cross like this.
Which just sets the stage perfectly.
It does, because the moment the priest's feet, carrying the ark, touch the water's edge,
The water stops.
piles up, way upstream near a city called Adam. And downstream, it flows away, leaving dry ground right opposite Jericho.
It's an echo of the Red Sea, isn't it? A
Right.
deliberate parallel.
Absolutely. Reinforcing that the same God is still with this generation.
And the priests just stand there in the middle of the riverbed.
Stand firm, holding that space, holding back the water until every single Israelite has crossed over safely. What an image of steadfastness.
Chapter 4, then, is about remembering this. The memorial stones.
Yes, the Lord tells Joshua, pick 12 men, one from each tribe,
And they take stones from where the priests stood.
right from the middle of the Jordan. The purpose is crystal clear. These stones are a teaching tool for the future.
So their kids will ask, what do these stones mean?
And they can tell them the story of how the Jordan waters were cut off by the Lord's power, creating a lasting memory.
So they set up 12 stones at Gilgal, their first camp.
Right. And interestingly, Joshua also sets up 12 stones in the riverbed itself, where the priests had stood.
Huh. So one memorial visible on land, one marking the exact spot under the water.
Kind of anchors the memory in the physical place it happened. Very powerful.
And we get that reminder that eastern tribes, Reuben, Gad, half of Manasseh, they crossed over armed, fulfilling their promise.
Yeah, underlining the unity, the collective effort. And the text says, that day the Lord exalted Joshua.
Made him great in everyone's eyes.
So they respected him, feared him, just like they had Moses. The continuity of leadership is established.
Then the priests finally come up out of the Jordan.
And boom, the waters return, flow back to normal, flood stage and all. Like the pause button is released.
The date is even noted, 10th day of the first month. They camp at Gilgal.
And the chapter circles back to the stones again, a testament to God's power like the Red Sea, so everyone on earth might know his might and Israel would fear him forever. Witness and identity.
Chapter 5 then feels like a shift, preparing for what's next, but also some internal stuff first.
Definitely. First, the local kings, Amorites, Canaanites, they hear about the Jordan drying up and they're terrified. Their main defense is gone.
Makes sense. But then the Lord tells Joshua something surprising. Circumcise the men again? A second circumcision.
Yeah, the text explains this. The generation born during the 40 years in the wilderness hadn't been circumcised.
Why not?
Well, the previous generation, the ones who disobeyed at Kadesh Barnea, they died out in the wilderness as a judgment.
Oh, okay.
So this new generation, born under that cloud, hadn't gone through the covenant ritual. Doing it now, right before the conquest begins in earnest, is about recommitting, reestablishing the covenant sign.
So it's a physical act of renewal, marking them as God's people for this new phase. It happens at a place they call
Hill of the Foreskins, which is then renamed Gilgal.
Gilgal, meaning rolling away.
And the Lord says, today I have rolled away the reproach of Egypt from you. It's a powerful symbol of cleansing, a fresh start. The shame of slavery and wandering is officially over.
Then, right after that, they celebrate Passover there on the plains of Jericho.
Another crucial act of remembrance, connecting their current situation back to their original deliverance from Egypt.
And then a really significant change.
Yeah.
The manna stops.
Yeah. The miraculous food they relied on in the wilderness, it ceases.
Why now?
Because they've started eating the produce of the land of Canaan. It signals a shift. They're no longer wilderness wanderers. They're inheriting the land. Dependence shifts from daily miracle to the provision of the land itself. Still God's provision, just through different means.
And then Joshua has this incredible encounter near Jericho.
Almost surreal. He sees a man standing there, sword drawn.
Not clear who he is, so Joshua challenges him, right?
Yeah.
Friend or foe?
Are you for us or for our enemies? And the answer is stunning.
Neither.
No, he says, but as commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come.
Whoa. Not just any soldier. This is the captain of God's heavenly host.
Talk about a chain of command. Joshua immediately falls down, worships, asks for orders.
And the command is, take off your sandals.
Loose your shoe from your foot, for the place where you stand is holy. Just like Moses at the burning bush.
It sets the stage, doesn't it? This whole campaign is happening on holy ground, under divine command.
Precisely. It frames the battle for Jericho not just as military, but as sacred work.
Which brings us right to chapter 6, The fall of Jericho, famous story, described as totally locked down, right?
Yeah, heavily fortified, shut up tight, a major obstacle.
But the Lord's battle plan is unconventional, to say the least.
That's putting it mildly. March around the city once a day for 6 days.
Led by priests blowing ram's horn trumpets in front of the ark. It sounds like a parade, not a siege.
It really does. And then day 7, it ramps up.
7 times around the city.
Followed by one long blast on the trumpets and then a massive shout from the whole army. That's the signal for the walls to collapse.
Joshua relays all this, including the command for total silence until the shout.
Yeah.
Imagine the discipline that took.
Incredible. It highlights the absolute faith and obedience required. Just trust the plan, even if it sounds crazy. And the source details them doing exactly this, day after day.
Then day 7 arrives. 7 circuits. The long trumpet blast, the huge shout.
And the text says the walls fell down flat. Just collapsed. It's extraordinary.
But before they charge in, Joshua gives another command about the city itself, the accursed thing.
Right, the harem. Everything in Jericho, except Rahab and her family, is devoted to the Lord, which in this case means devoted to destruction.
So, not for plunder.
Mostly not. It's like the first fruits of the conquest are being given entirely to God, a total offering, no personal gain.
Except for Rahab, who is explicitly spared, mercy amidst the judgment.
Exactly, because of her actions helping the spies. And certain things like silver, gold, bronze, iron vessels, they are to be saved, but for the Lord's treasury, not for individuals.
Okay, so it underscores God's ownership.
Yeah.
The Israelites enter the flattened city, and it's grim.
It is. The account describes the utter destruction of all life within the city as commanded. Stark.
Rahab and her family are brought out safely, placed outside the main camp initially, and the city.
Burned to the ground, completely destroyed.
And Joshua pronounces that curse on anyone who tries to rebuild it.
Yeah, a solemn oath suggesting Jericho held a particular significance, maybe as a symbol of Canaanite resistance, that shouldn't be revived.
And the chapter ends stating the Lord was with Joshua. His fame spread, big victory, solidified his leadership.
You'd think they're on an unstoppable roll, but chapter 7 slams on the brakes. Achan's sin.
Right after this huge, divinely given victory, someone breaks the rule about the accursed things.
Achan, from the tribe of Judah. He secretly takes some forbidden items from Jericho.
And this isn't just a personal mistake, is it?
No, the text is clear. The Lord's anger burns against all of Israel because of it. This idea of corporate responsibility is crucial. One person's sin affects the whole community standing before God.
And we see the immediate consequence when they go against the next town, A.
Yeah. Joshua sends spies. They come back saying, a small fry, don't need the whole army. A bit overconfident, maybe.
Definitely seems that way compared to the Jericho prep and the attack.
It's a disaster. They're routed. 36 Israelites are killed.
Which must have been a massive shock after Jericho. Fear spreads through the camp.
Totally. Joshua is devastated. He and the elders tear their clothes, put dust on their heads, fall before the ark.
And Joshua basically asks God, why? Why did you bring us here just for this defeat? It's a real crisis of faith moment.
Understandable. But God's response is blunt. Get up! Israel has sinned. They've taken the devoted things. That's why you can't win.
So the defeat wasn't God failing them. It was a direct result of their own disobedience. Hidden sin.
Exactly. And God sets up this process to find the guilty party. Lot casting, tribe by tribe, clan by clan, family by family.
Until it narrows down to Achan. No hiding.
None. Joshua confronts him, urges him to confess.
And Achan spills it. He saw a beautiful Babylonian garment, silver, gold, coveted them, took them, hid them in his tent.
Classic human greed, right, undermining everything.
They find the stuff buried in his tent. And the punishment is severe.
For Achan, his family, everything he owns, taken to the valley of Abor, stoned, then burned. It's harsh, but it underlines the absolute seriousness of the covenant and breaking faith.
And the valley gets named Achor, meaning trouble, as a stark reminder.
But chapter 8 shows they can recover. God reassures Joshua, tells him to attack Ai again.
But this time things are different. They're allowed to take the spoil, the livestock.
And crucially, God gives them a specific strategy. Set an ambush.
So it's not just faith, it's strategy too, this time guided by God. Joshua sets it up, sends a large force to hide behind this city.
While he approaches with another group, then they stage a fake retreat.
Drawing the men of Ai out, who must have thought, here we go again, easy win.
Exactly. They fall right into the trap. Joshua gives the signal.
Stretches out his spear.
And the ambush force rushes in, takes the undefended city, sets it on fire.
The men of Ai are caught, doing the fire at their backs and Joshua's force in front, Total defeat.
Complete victory this time. The king is captured, executed later, his body put under a pile of stones at the gate, a clear sign of conquest.
And this time, they get the spoils. It shows obedience leads back to blessing and learning from mistakes.
Absolutely. And after this win, Joshua does something else significant. Builds an altar on Mount Ebal.
Following Moses' instructions. Made of uncut stones, they offer sacrifices.
But more than that, they write the law, or parts of it, on plastered stones there, and then they read it all out.
The blessings for obedience, the curses for disobedience, in front of everyone, men, women, children, foreigners.
It's a major covenant renewal ceremony, right there in the heart of the land they're starting to possess, grounding themselves again in God's word.
Chapter 9 then throws us a curveball. Not a battle, but deception. The Gibeonites.
Right. So, news of Israel's wins is spreading. Other kings are forming alliances to fight back. But the Gibeonites, they try a different tactic.
Super cunning. They pretend to be ambassadors from a really distant country.
The whole act. Worn-out sacks, patched wineskins, old clothes, moldy bread. Like, they've traveled for months.
And they spin this yarn about hearing of the Lord's fame from afar, wanting a peace treaty.
And here's the crucial mistake. The Israelites look at the evidence that I was like, the moldy bread, the worn clothes.
But they don't ask God.
The text specifically says, did not ask counsel from the Lord. They make a treaty, swear an oath to let them live, based purely on the deception.
Big mistake. Because 3 days later,
they find out the Gibeonites are actually their neighbors, living right there in the land they were supposed to conquer.
the people are furious with the leaders. Understandable.
But the leaders say, look, we swore an oath in the Lord's name. We can't break it. Breaking an oath was a huge deal.
So what's the solution?
They uphold the oath the Gibeonites live, but they're made permanent servants, woodcutters and water carriers for the community and the altar.
So, spared but subjugated. When Joshua confronts them, why did they do it?
Pure fear. They say they heard God had commanded Israel to destroy all the inhabitants. Deception was their only hope for survival. And that becomes their status, a complex outcome from failing to seek God's guidance.
Chapter 10, we're back to major battles. The Southern Coalition.
Yeah, Adoni-Zedek, king of Jerusalem, he hears Gibeon made peace with Israel, and he panics. Gibeon was a big, powerful city.
Their alliance with Israel is a threat.
So he rallies 4 other Amorite kings. Let's go attack Gibeon for siding with the enemy.
The Gibeonites, remembering their treaty, send an urgent message to Joshua at Gilgal. Help.
And the Lord tells Joshua, go, don't be afraid, I've given them into your hand.
Joshua marches all night from Gilgal, a surprise attack.
And the Lord throws the Amorites into confusion, a huge victory near Gibeon. But as they flee,
Comes the really dramatic part, the hailstones.
massive hailstones. The text says more died from the hail than from the Israelites' swords. Direct divine intervention in the battle.
And then, arguably the most extraordinary moment in the book, Joshua's prayer.
For the sun and moon to stand still, to give them more daylight to finish the route.
Sun, stand still over Gibeon. Moon, in the valley of Ajalon. It's almost unbelievable.
And the text says it happened. The sun stayed in the sky for about a full day. It even mentions another source, the book of Jashar.
And emphasizes there was never a day like it, God listening to a human voice like that. Because God was fighting for Israel.
It shows the unique level of divine support they were experiencing. The 5 kings leading the attack. They run and hide in a cave.
But they're found. Joshua has them brought out and does that symbolic thing.
Makes his commanders put their feet on the kings' necks, a sign of total domination.
Then they're executed, hung on trees till evening, their bodies thrown back in the caves, sealed with stones. Grim, but decisive.
And Joshua doesn't stop there. He rolls through the south, takes Makkedah, Libnah, Lachish.
Even Gezer, when its king tries to help Lachish.
Igran.
Hebron, Debir.
Systematically conquering city after city, carrying out the command of utter destruction against the inhabitants, consolidating control over the whole southern region.
The summary is sweeping hills, Negev, foothills, slopes, all the kings defeated.
And the key refrain, because the Lord, the God of Israel, fought for Israel.
Then finally, back to the camp at Gilgal. Southern campaign done.
Chapter 11 shifts north. Jabin, king of Hazor was a major power up there.
He forms another huge coalition, kings from all over the north, with tons of horses and chariots, A massive army gathered at the waters of Merom.
Looks like the ultimate challenge, but again, the Lord tells Joshua, don't fear them. Tomorrow I'll deliver them.
And gives specific instructions about the horses and chariots.
Hamstring the horses, make them useless for war, and burn the chariots. Again, neutralizing conventional military might, forcing reliance on God.
Joshua attacks them suddenly at Merom. Another decisive victory. They pursue the fleeing armies for miles.
And Joshua does exactly as commanded. Hamstrings the horses, burns the chariots. Hazor itself, the lead kingdom, captured and burned.
But interestingly, not all the other northern cities were burned.
Right. They took the spoils, destroyed the people, but left many of the cities standing on their mounds. Only Hazor was singled out for burning.
The text again stresses Joshua's complete obedience to Moses' original commands from the Lord. He followed through on everything.
And it summarizes the huge extent of the conquest from Mount Halak in the far south, right up to Baal-gad near Mount Hermon in the north. All their kings defeated.
But it notes this took a long time. Prolonged warfare.
Yeah, it wasn't instant. And only Gibeon made peace. Everyone else fought.
And there's that theological point again, the Lord hardened their hearts to fight, ensuring their judgment.
It's a difficult concept, but central to the narrative's understanding of God's sovereignty. We also hear about wiping out the Anakim, those giants they feared back in numbers.
Except for a few left in Philistine cities like Gaza, Gath, Ashdod, fulfilling that promise, removing that fear.
So the chapter concludes. Joshua took the entire land promised by the Lord to Moses. He gives it as an inheritance to the tribes. And finally,
The land had rest from war, a major turning point.
Chapter 12 then is like an appendix almost, a list.
Yeah, a tally of the defeated kings. First, the two kings east of the Jordan defeated under Moses, Sihon, and Og, with their territories described.
Sets the stage for the longer list. 31 kings defeated by Joshua west of the Jordan.
Jericho, Ai, Jerusalem, Hebron, Hazor. It goes on and on. It really drives home the scale of the conquest.
It's a formal record of the victory, defining the territory now under Israelite control, which leads logically into the next major section.
Chapters 13 to 19, dividing the land.
Exactly. Time to allocate all this conquered territory among the 9.5 tribes who still needed their inheritance.
Reminding us, Reuben, Gad, and half Manasseh already got theirs east of the Jordan.
Right. And the method for dividing the rest. By lot.
Seen as discerning God's will, not just based on, say, who fought hardest or who had the biggest tribe.
Though tribal size likely played some role in the general size of the lots, we also get that great story of Caleb.
Stepping forward, reminding Joshua of his faithfulness back when they first spied out the land 40 years earlier. Asking for Hebron, the area with the Anakim descendants.
And he gets it. A reward for his long-standing faith and courage. A powerful personal story within the larger national narrative.
Then the text gets very detailed, outlining boundaries and cities for each tribe. Judah, Joseph, split into Ephraim and Manasseh. Benjamin, Simeon.
Whose land was actually carved out within Judah's territory. Then Zebulun, Issachar, Asher, Naphtali, Dan.
And Dan has that interesting footnote. Their initial area wasn't enough or maybe too contested, so they went north and conquered Leshem, renaming it Dan. Shows the settling process wasn't perfectly smooth.
Realities on the ground. And crucial point, the tribe of Levi gets no land inheritance.
Because their inheritance is the priesthood, serving the Lord.
Exactly. But they do get designated cities scattered throughout the other tribal territories with pasture lands, 48 cities in total. Keeps them integrated across the nation.
And Joshua himself gets his own inheritance, Timnath-Serah in Ephraim.
The whole division process formally concludes at Shiloh, which was the location of the tabernacle at that time, the religious center.
Okay, chapter 20. Cities of refuge. This is an important legal provision.
Hugely important. A command from God to set aside specific cities.
For people who killed someone accidentally. Manslaughter, not murder.
Right. To provide protection from the avenger of blood, usually the victim's next of kin seeking vengeance.
So, if you accidentally caused a death, you could run to one of these cities.
Plead your case to the elders at the gate. If they found it credible, you were allowed in, protected.
Protected until when?
Until a formal judgment, and even if found unintentional, you had to stay within the city limits until the death of the current high priest. Only then could you go home safely.
A fascinating system. And 6 cities were designated.
3 west of the Jordan Kadesh, Shechem, Hebron, and 3 east Bezer, Ramoth-Gilead, Golan, spread out for accessibility.
Then chapter 21 follows up on the Levites. They formally request the cities they were promised.
Right. Since they had no land, they needed places to live. The other tribes give them 48 cities, with pasture lands distributed proportionally from their own inheritances, again, by lot.
And the text lists these cities, allocated to the different Levitical clans, Kohathites, Gershonites, Merarites.
And importantly, it confirms these Levitical cities included the 6 cities of refuge, integrating that legal function with the priestly tribe.
And this chapter ends with another strong statement of fulfillment.
Yeah. The Lord gave them all the land he promised. They possessed it, lived in it, had rest from enemies. Every single good promise fulfilled. Powerful conclusion to the conquest and settlement phase.
Chapter 22 shifts focus back to the eastern tribes. Time for them to go home.
Joshua commends them. They fulfilled their duty, helped conquer Canaan. He blesses them, sends them back east with a lot of wealth, spoils of war.
But on their way, near the Jordan, but still on the western side, they build an altar. A big one.
And this causes immediate panic among the western tribes. They see it and think, rebellion. They're setting up their own worship center, breaking away.
It almost triggers a civil war.
It really does. The western tribes gather, ready to fight. But first, they send a delegation led by Phinehas the priest's son to confront them.
Accusing them of betraying God, just like with Achan or the rebellion at Peor generations earlier. Serious charges.
But the eastern tribes have an explanation, a crucial one.
They say, no, this altar isn't for sacrifices. It's not a rival to the tabernacle.
It's a witness, a memorial. Ed, they call it later, meaning witness.
A witness to what?
That they, the eastern tribes, are part of Israel too, that their descendants shouldn't be excluded just because the Jordan River physically separates them. It's a symbol of unity built out of fear of future separation.
Wow. So a complete misunderstanding, almost leading to disaster.
Exactly. Once the Western delegation hears the explanation, they're relieved. They praise God that war was averted, unity is preserved.
Which leads us towards the end, chapter 23. Joshua is old now.
Yeah, he gathers all the leaders of Israel for a farewell address, his final words of guidance.
He reminds them of everything God did fighting for them, giving them the land.
And urges them, be strong. Keep the law of Moses meticulously. Don't deviate. Don't mingle with the remaining Canaanite nations or their gods. Cling to the Lord.
He stresses, God fought for you. He'll keep helping you if you stay faithful.
But the warning is just as strong. If you disobey, if you intermarry, serve other gods, then God will stop helping. Those nations will become traps, and eventually we'll be kicked out of this good land.
It's a clear laying out of the covenant consequences. Blessings for obedience, curses for disobedience.
He affirms, not one of God's good promises failed, but warns, just as surely the curses will come if you break the covenant. Sobering words.
And chapter 24 is the final act. Another gathering, this time at Shechem, a very significant place historically.
Joshua recounts their whole history again from Abraham's call, through Egypt, the wilderness, the conquest, reminding them of God's continuous faithfulness, and then he throws down the gauntlet, that famous challenge.
Choose this day whom you will serve. The gods your ancestors served beyond the Euphrates, the gods of the Amorites whose land you live in.
And his iconic declaration, but as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Powerful personal commitment.
The people respond enthusiastically, we'll serve the Lord too. He's the one who saved us.
But Joshua pushes back a bit. You can't just casually promise this. God is holy, he's jealous. Forsaking him has serious consequences. He wants them to understand the weight of their choice.
They insist, no, we will serve the Lord. So Joshua formalizes it.
Makes a covenant with them right there at Shechem, sets up laws, writes them down in the book of God's law, and sets up a large stone.
Another witness stone.
Yeah, this stone has heard all the words the Lord spoke to us. It will be a witness against you if you are false to your God, a tangible reminder of their pledge.
After this solemn ceremony, Joshua sends everyone home to their inheritances, and then
he dies at 110 years old, buried in his own land.
And the book ends with this important note. Israel served the Lord all the days of Joshua and all the days of the elders who outlived him.
The generation who had personally seen God's great works, it implies a period of faithfulness tied to that living memory.
We also get the final tying up of loose ends. Joseph's bones, carried all the way from Egypt, are finally buried at Shechem. And Eleazar the priest, Aaron's son, also dies and is buried. The passing of that foundational generation.
It marks the end of an era, the era of conquest and settlement under Joshua's leadership.
So, wrapping up this deep dive, we've covered a massive amount of ground. From Moses' death, Joshua taking charge, that incredible Jordan crossing.
The conquest of Jericho and Ai, the Gibeonite Treaty, the major southern and northern campaign.
Dividing the land, setting up refuge cities, dealing with potential division, and finally, Joshua's farewell and the covenant renewal at Shechem. It's epic.
Absolutely, and the themes just jump out at you. Leadership, definitely. The absolute necessity of obedience and faith, and seeing God's promises consistently fulfilled, but always with that condition of faithfulness attached.
It really does give you a lot to chew on. Thinking about, leadership challenges today, big transitions people or groups go through.
And that role of remembrance, right? Those memorial stones. How do we keep shared purpose and identity alive over time?
Yeah. What are the modern Jordan crossings we face, and what are our memorial stones, the things that remind us of foundational values and commitments? It's a story that definitely resonates far beyond its ancient context.
For sure.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Joshua.